Near the end of March 1845, I borrowed an axe and went down to the woods by Walden Pond, nearest to where I intended to build my house, and began to cut down some tall, arrowy white pines, still in their youth, for timber. It is difficult to begin without borrowing, but it is perhaps the most generous course thus to permit your fellow men to have interest in your enterprise. The owner of the axe, as he released his hold on it, said it was the apple of his eye, but I returned it sharper than I received it. It was a pleasant hillside where I worked, covered in pine woods, through which I looked out to the pond, and a small open field in the woods where pines and hickories were springing up. The ice in the pond was not yet dissolved, though there were some open spaces, and it was all dark-colored and saturated with water. There were some slight flurries of snow during the days I worked there, but for the most part, when I came out onto the railroad on my way home, its yellow sand heap stretched away gleamingly into the hazy atmosphere, and the rails shone in the spring sun. And I heard the lark and the pewee and the other birds already come to commence another year with us. They were pleasant spring days, in which the winter of man's discontent was thawing as well as the earth, and the life that had lain torpid began to stretch itself. One day, when my axe had come off, and I had cut a green hickory for a wedge, driving it with a stone, and had placed the hole to soak in a pond hole, in order to swell the wood, I saw a striped snake run into the water, and he lay on the bottom, apparently without inconvenience, as long as I stayed there, or more than a quarter of an hour, perhaps because he had not fairly come out of the torpid state. It appeared to me that for a like reason, men remain in their present low and primitive condition, but if they should feel the influence of spring, and of spring's arousing them, they would feel the necessity to rise into a higher and more ethereal life. I had previously seen snakes in the frosty mornings in my path, with portions of their bodies still numb and inflexible, waiting for the sun to thaw them. On the 1st of April it rained and melted the ice, and in the early part of the day, which was very foggy, I heard a stray goose groping about over the pond and cackling as if lost, or like the spirit of the fog. So I went on for some days, cutting and hewing timber, and also studs and rafters, and all with the narrow axe, not having many communicable or scholar-like thoughts, simply singing to myself. I hewed the main timbers 6 inches square, most of the studs on 2 sides only, and the rafters and floor timbers on 1 side, leaving the rest with the bark on, so they were just as straight and much stronger than the sawed ones. Each stick was carefully measured by its stump, for I had borrowed other tools by this time. My day in the woods were not very long ones, yet I casually carried my dinner of bread and butter, and read the newspaper in which it was wrapped at noon, sitting amid the green pine boughs which I had cut off, and to my bread was imparted some of their fragrance, for my hands were covered with a thick coat of pitch. Before I had done, I was more the friend than the faux pine tree, though I had cut down some of them, having become better acquainted with it. Sometimes a rambler in the wood was attracted by the sound of my axe, and we chatted pleasantly over the chips I had made.